Welcome to today's webinar, Employee Recognition, How to Promote Praise and Influence Engagement in the Workplace. My name is Natalie Varanya, and I am the Marketing Specialist here at TalentMap, and I'll be your webinar host today. We have a special webinar presentation lined up for you. We have Norm Bailey-David, Senior Vice President of Engagement here at TalentMap. For our clients joining us today, you probably already know Norm. He is TalentMap's in-house expert in workforce measurement and employee experiences, and he works very closely with our clients to help them really understand their survey data and improve their workforce with effective action planning. Welcome, Norm.
Thank you, Natalie.
And for our special guest joining us today we have Tom Short. He is the president and founder of Kudos. To give everyone a little bit of background on Tom, over the past 25 years, he has used his passion for entrepreneurship and marketing to found numerous highly successful companies, including Bright Ideas and Idea Machine. At each organization Tom has built, employee engagement has been first and foremost. He leads business development at Kudos and is active in speaking engagements and thought leadership activities in the HR industry. Tom is passionate about the role recognition plays in creating employee engagement and is dedicated to educating the world about what genuine recognition can do for people everywhere. Welcome, Tom.
Thank you very much. We're going to have to shorten that intro up in the future, but that was very nice. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And for today's agenda, once I'm done with all the formal introductions, Norm will start us off with an intro to employee recognition with some insights on the impact recognition has on employee engagement and the overall business success. Then Tom will jump in and share his expertise on key strategies and tools to create a culture of recognition, as well as provide examples of what an effective recognition program looks like. At the end, we'll also reserve the last 20 minutes for some Q&A. So before we jump right in, I wanted to give everyone a brief overview of Kudos and TalentMap. So Kudos serves over 80 countries in 24 verticals and in 8 languages. The Kudos social employee recognition system gives organizations a branded online environment that becomes the central hub for creating value-based employee achievement. And then for those who are not familiar with TalentMap, I wanted to give you a quick overview of who we are and what we do. So TalentMap is a trusted advisor in employee engagement and surveying. We have been in business for over 18 years, and in those years, we have conducted more than 7,000 employee engagement survey projects. Each year, we survey over 1 million employees across more than 500 organizations. And at TalentMap, we have one focus, and that is to partner with organizations to improve their workplaces. So we do this using 3 core elements. First, we ensure you ask the right questions when launching a full employee engagement survey, a pulse survey, entry-exit survey, or even a 360 survey. And then secondly, we uncover valuable employee insights by diving deep into the data and really analyzing the results. And lastly, what makes TalentMap truly unique among our sea of competitors is that we stick it out and make sure that all of our clients act on their survey results. This ensures that they make real change in their workforce through effective action planning and additional post-survey consulting services. And then, as you can see from this sample, we've worked with a number of clients across North America in a number of sectors. And with our years of experience, we have established comprehensive industry benchmarks to put our clients' survey results in the context of their competitive marketplace. So now that you all know a little bit more about TalentMap and Kudos, we'll get started. So over to you, Norm.
Thank you very much, Natalie. Good morning to some of you in the West. Good afternoon to those of you in the East. Good evening to those of you who listen in Europe, Africa. I don't see any Asian participants today, but if you're hanging tough with us, that's pretty good at 1 a.m. So most of you are going to get this, the recording of this anyway. So I like to start these webinars by just introducing really quickly the context and where do they come from. How do we decide what we're going to talk about? And recognition is obviously a hot topic when we're talking about engagement. But really, where this comes from the TalentMap perspective, and this might be very obvious to you, but it's been a learning for us over the last number of years, is when we go back and we look at the recommendations that we make that emerge from the engagement work that we do with our clients, we're finding out that recognition programs and more systematic recognition is one of the most often made recommendations, regardless of whether the organization that we're working with is very highly engaged or whether it's low engaged. We still make the recommendation to, or find ourselves making the recommendation that recognition is a necessary part of continuous improvement. So in those organizations, even which have the highest engagement, in our top 10%, I mean, of course, nobody can stand pat. Even those very highly engaged organizations, and some of you that are listening to us today are part of that group. What we find in many of those organizations is performance is taken for granted. So when someone exceeds, someone does a real good job, someone does on a continuous basis, it becomes part of the norm. And because it's becoming part of the norm or the normal way of doing things, recognition tends to take a back seat. And of course, this is not a good thing for all the reasons that we're going to explain to you in the next 40 minutes or so. And of course, more often in those organizations where we have the lowest engagement, it's largely because people don't feel appreciated or valued. That's one of the most important reasons that they leave organizations. So amongst other things, we find ourselves here at TalentMap recommending to our clients that, more recognition is necessary, be more systematic in your recognition. So we're hoping today's webinar will give you a little bit more of a recipe, a little bit more of the how do we do that. And I'm sure Tom and the Kudos team and their part of the presentation is going to give you a lot of good direction in doing that. So I think everybody here is probably convinced that recognition is a good thing, but you know what? When you're presenting to your leadership teams, when you're presenting to the boards, they need to see a business case. And so there's a number of factoids or facts you can pick out of this presentation. This has been studied to death. There's a ton of research that supports recognition and its role in higher engagement and higher engagement's role in the productivity and other business metrics of the organization. So you can see some facts here. Only 1 in 3 workers in the US agreed or strongly agreed that they received recognition or praise in the recent past. It's not uncommon for employees to feel that they're routinely ignored, even in highly engaged organizations, as I said before. And one of the most striking facts that we come across is employees who don't feel adequately recognized, they're more than twice as likely to say that they're going to quit. So by not doing this, you're running a very high risk of a higher attrition. And of course, we have a number of other pieces here. More productivity, that makes sense. I mean, people said they'd work harder if they were recognized, and we also know that is not only in their intent, but also in fact when we measure discretionary effort. The two here are really interesting. There's a decrease in employee turnover, 15%. So if people do feel recognized, as we saw before, the counterpoint is if they don't feel recognized, they're more than twice as likely to quit. If they do feel recognized, we do see clear impact on employee turnover. So that means cost savings. That means more efficiencies. And since we also look at safety culture in our workforce measurement, 50% reduction in reportable accidents when people feel that they're being recognized. So you wouldn't necessarily make that link, but there it is. So even those of you who might be working or have colleagues in occupational health and safety in your organizations, you can bring this to them and say, it's not only about HR here. Look, we're going to actually reduce safety. So it's so obvious. Then if it's so obvious, why aren't more people giving out recognition? Why isn't recognition why isn't this part of every business's culture, every organization's culture? It sounds like it should be so obvious. Well, In all of the research, and I just want to point out on the right-hand side of your screen, Kudos has actually done a white paper on this. Our research is beyond, it includes that, but goes beyond it includes our own database, includes a lot of literature search, and it all boils down to again, the generations. It comes right back down to the generations and the generations and the generational culture. So I'm going to take a minute really to explain where that comes from. So if you think about, it's very similar to a parent-child relationship in the sense that as we treat our children the way we were taught to be treated ourselves. And the same is, or very similar, is true in the workplace. Managers treat their employees the way they were treated as employees by their managers. So you have a generational thing going on. So if we look at the 4 generations in the workplace, we can see how this is evolving. And how the conclusion from this, as well as that I'll show on the next slide, is really that we got to change, right? Most managers still today are in the boomer and X generation. Millennials are coming up there, but we're not there yet, right? So if we look back at the traditionalists, I'm not going to go into the details of who these folks are. Most people have had so many presentations and stuff on the generations that goes without saying. But the traditionalists, those folks born pre-end of Second World War, they came from very, very command and control. They were very highly influenced by military. And so, of course, they're also Depression era. At least the traditionalists' parents were Depression era. And so when you're a Depression era and you're influenced by that and what happened in the 1930s, then you took a lot of satisfaction just by being able to keep your job. So if you kept your job, you were interpreting that, you know what, boss isn't coming to see me, nothing's wrong, no news is good news. So for those folks, and then the boomers after that, you know what, I'm not going to say anything, you're doing a great job, don't come and see me, no news is good news. And that's, as the boomers, of being one myself, this is essentially how we were managed as a generation. Where we were said, if your boss came to see you, it was not a good thing, right? So no news was good news for us. But what we wanted to see was, we still wanted to be recognized, but words didn't really mean much. There are so many boomers. Boomers are known for our numbers. And we didn't, you can talk it up. You can talk, tell me I'm good and everything. What boomers valued and still do is, show me, don't tell me. Show me something extraordinary. Everybody, there are so many people doing the basic stuff. We only expected a reward for extraordinary performance, something special, something out of the ordinary. Give me something to put on the wall. Xers are very similar, a lot fewer numbers, so very influenced. And of course, a lot of Xers were also managed directly by the traditionalists and some boomers, but we're very close in age. So they wanted some feedback too. And so they would sheepishly come up and say, you know what, I'm sorry to interrupt, but how am I doing? And they would shy away from those conversations. But you know what, one of the things about Xers is if they were forced into a conversation, they were pretty direct. And of course, I'm generalizing about everybody's everybody's an individual, but we do see these trends. Now we have a sharp divergence with the millennials and the millennial generation coming in, and soon to follow Gen Z or Gen Z. And what very, very different now is because communications has flattened organizations and it has made communication so democratic, they want instantaneous feedback. Whenever I want feedback, I want a reward when I need it, when I want it. So this whole no news is good news thing is completely a foreign concept to those folks in this generation. And of course, many of you are of a certain age and who have kids of a certain age will remember the soccer fields and the baseball diamonds of the 1990s when these folks were kids and everybody got a medal. There was a reward for participation. So whereas as boomers and to a lesser extent Xers, we only expected a recognition or reward if we did something extraordinary, above and beyond, special. Now the new generation is expecting reward just for showing up, just for participation. And I don't mean to sound facetious, that's just the way we've brought these folks up. So now what that all means is we need to change. Our paradigm for recognition and the necessity for recognition has fundamentally shifted. And so there's two forms of that. There's two things I'm going to talk. One of the things is in career. John will expand on the role of career and career progression a little bit more. But one of the things I like to quote is from one of our very highly engaged clients, who at every presentation, every time we send out these, we present our survey results to this particular client, the president comes in and he says, you know what, if you leave the organization for a promotion, I will be the first to congratulate you and we will have succeeded. But if you leave for a lateral position for less responsibility, I will question why we failed. And that is the new paradigm in terms of career and career recognition. Basically valuing people for themselves rather than what they can offer to the organization in the next step. And I'll skip over Mike Gamson, but basically it comes down to the same thing. We need to look at recognition from the career perspective as going beyond our own organizations. What I like to point to is this. This is one of my favorite slides that I give at leadership workshops. And I see it posted on a lot of bulletin boards. I see a lot of people ask me for this slide. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but I will point out that of all of the different questions or things that great leaders say to highly engaged teams, you'll notice 3 of them, more than any other category, are about recognition. Thank you. You've done a great job. I value your contribution. So you can see we need to change. We need to move towards that paradigm, because what we expect is no longer what our employees, half of whom, if not more, are now millennials and then moving now into the Gen Z or Gen Z. Before I turn it over to Tom, I just want to say one more thing. Tom's going to talk to you a lot about recognizing behavior. And I've also seen this go awry if we're recognizing the wrong behavior. So back to, maybe some of you might have noticed that in the description of the boomers, there was a little caption that showed workaholics. If I don't see you, you're not working. And so a lot of, when recognition did come, it came for the wrong reasons. And in this cartoon points it out, we recognized level of effort. We recognized working 24-hour days, and by doing that, provided a completely wrong message. If we reward the wrong behaviors, we're going to get the wrong behaviors in return. So on that note, I'm going to hand the mic over to Tom, and he's going to tell you a lot more concrete stuff about, how do we actually do this? How do we move from thinking about being, improving recognition in our organization to actually do it? So Tom, go ahead.
Perfect. Thanks, Norm. Great setup and awesome coverage. I'm going to steal some of your ideas and use them in my future presentations, because that was awesome. But moving into kind of a little bit more detail in regards to how recognition as a strategy can be used to help you achieve the business outcomes that you're looking for, we can get into a little bit of a discussion on the process. So a lot of organizations globally that we're talking to are looking for ways to improve their recognition programs and culture in total. And a lot of people are of the old guard, where it's nomination based and semi-annual or annual kind of employee of the year awards and things like that. And then that leaves so many people out, and it's cryptic and it's a star chamber, and you don't know why decisions are made. And similar to what Norm was talking about, moving from generations of traditionalists down to millennials, everything's changing to a more free-flowing environment where it's a lot more social and a lot more transparency. But to create a systemic culture that is positive and built on celebrating your culture and connecting and communicating with all, you need to kind of look at your current reality. And I know that everybody is always trying to improve and may not be where they want to be yet. But if you look at your current reality and you have a goal or an imagined future that you're working for, you just work through an iterative process. But to do through this iterative process to get to success, you need systems. And the systems are put in place so that you can manage things. So you create structure, programs, processes. And in the old ways, a lot of that was incentivized with rewards to get the correct involvement and participation. And one of the things that we're seeing now is that there's this new layer being added in with the social environments where people are more interacting than directing. And it's more about building relationships, coaching, and mentoring. And that is putting two processes together where you have systems and tools that create the accountability and the transparency and the opportunity to participate. And then you have the interacting, coaching, and mentoring elements that start to get to the systemic results that you want. And a lot of that is, comes to fruition with recognition, recognizing the behaviors that lead to success and recognizing frequently to get more of those behaviors to get to that imagined future. Really what we're talking about here is that if you don't actually put systems in place and have the tools that will help you achieve the outcome that you're looking for, you're really leaving everything up to chance. And if you leave it up to chance, you're going to get the culture you deserve versus the culture you want. So put a program in place, use the tools that are available to you, and engage everybody in the organization to be part of the solution versus just a command and control top down, especially in this new paradigm that we're working in now. So really what we're talking about here is that globally there's a cultural shift going on. Just like Norm's slide on the various different generations, we've moved from an environment where it was all about distant power, command and control, where the boss would tell you what to do and he'd say jump and you'd say how high. And it was about managing the outcomes and everybody working to one common goal as a collective group. And we were motivated mainly by the extrinsic items of pay, job titles, working in a safe environment and having job security. We've seen a paradigm shift happening in the last 10 years where now it's about close power, where an intern is just as likely to email or ask for a meeting or follow a CEO or the leadership on Twitter and Facebook and many of the other social tools that are available to us. And it's more about interacting with one another, versus managing. So again, basement to boardroom, boardroom to basement. It's a free flow of information and ideas in all the social tools that are out there now. And it's more about individualism, where the company wants to achieve its goals, and to achieve its goals, it is engaging its employees to get a higher level of discretionary effort and engagement. And vice versa, the company is doing its best to help the individual reach self-actualization, to grow as an individual, to be able to use their skills and develop their skills so that they become more valuable to the company, and eventually, able to command, more money and higher, better positions out there in the workplace. And I love that quote that you put in there, Norm, about the fact that if someone leaves our organization for a promotion and a better job, we've done our job here, which is truly the way it should be. And if they move for a lateral position or just want to get the heck out of Dodge, we know we're failing as a company in properly engaging those individuals. And then an important thing to note, throughout North America and the world, the global competition for talent is getting fierce. And if you're not engaging your people properly, the first people to leave your organization will be your best people, because those who can go get a job very easily somewhere else, if they don't feel appreciated or valued, they're very likely to jump ship and go elsewhere, which is bad for your company on many fronts. So anything you can do to create engagement is the right way to go. And you can use a variety of tools, from recognition and communication, a foundational element, to introducing other items of obviously getting feedback and not just interacting, but asking. And then you also have opportunities to bring in things like learning and development, community investment, charitable giving, to health and wellness initiatives. But all of them will always be better if you have a feedback loop through recognizing participation and achievement in any of those areas. What we're really saying here as well, like a lot of people still confuse rewards with recognition. They feel that if I give people something, they will work harder and do better. And people really don't really care as much as you think about the intrinsic or the extrinsic motivators, the incentives and bonuses and reward programs in that scenario. What they're really craving is that acknowledgement and feedback and recognition in that millennial way. And even if you are a boomer or an Xer, it still feels pretty darn good to have somebody, finally say to us, especially when we're not used to it, "Hey, Norm, hey, Natalie, you really rocked that. You did a great job." And that feels awesome. And if you can stay away from the rewards, you don't get into this entitlement trap where you have costs spiraling out of control, because a thank you is boundless and endless. You can always appreciate people, and of course you want it to be sincere and authentic, and as long as you demonstrate that aspect of recognizing somebody, which I'll get into a little bit later, recognition truly is a reservoir of opportunity that every company can employ, and employ very economically and very efficiently. And you can do more with less, and you can move more to that interacting model versus the managing model. So really, what does that mean from a financial standpoint? One of the things that always fascinates us is how do people measure success? And you can do it on specific KPIs like measuring the savings in retention or recruitment, or even measuring the savings and lost days at work from a safety component. But if you just focus on the reward element, the old way, when it was top down and reward based and incentive based, the average was around $2,000 per person in a lot of situations, and only a few would get recognized, and it was very obscure and unfair, and nobody really knew what was going on. And usually the sales teams were the ones getting all the accolades, in addition to senior leadership, and the rank and file and the people that are on the front line making a difference every day were kind of left out of that loop. Now we're seeing more of that interactive model where you can actually move to micro bonuses and casual benefits that really aren't going to break the bank. It's not go to the beach money. What people really want is the recognition. And if it happens to also include some casual benefits that add up to kind of a micro bonus at some point in time, it's really an afterthought. It's not the primary motivator or driver of a program. And that way you'll have a more democratic, more fair, far-reaching program that doesn't break the bank and can give you far greater business benefits and outcomes than the previous programs have done. And this is a great slide where it kind of demonstrates that, in a more true fact from the fact of surveys and polls. When asked what people value the most, incentives and bonuses above and beyond kind of the boomer generation kind of recognition to today's recognition of peer-to-peer, anywhere, anytime, ongoing recognition far outpaces all the other elements to lead to a successful program and what people truly crave. We've all seen Maslow's hierarchy, and we're, as we move from the traditionalists to the millennials, we are moving further up the hierarchy, where really it's more about that sense of belonging and looking for esteem, and eventually getting to, pursuing the career that you want and love and want to do, and you're investing time because it's something that you really want to do versus something you have to do. The old I live to work or I work to live methodology. Why can't you have both if you are doing it right? You can work in a great company that gives you great joy and a sense of accomplishment, and that allows you to also do the other things in your life. And if you do what you love and do it well, it also leads to the financial benefits that come with that. Here we're talking about some of the questions, like, what we asked or demonstrated or showed in the overview of the program. People are asking a few questions such as, or wanting to look for answers to a few questions such as, like, what are the business benefits and how do you measure the ROI? In this situation, with recognition, you can drive improvements in retention, to absenteeism, to productivity, which can be discretionary based and self-reported or measured on the bottom line, to morale score improvements, whether it's polls or NPS scores, to customer service improvements, to safety, employee evangelism, which leads to better employee reviews, and the better employee reviews and evangelism can lead to better quality candidates applying and wanting to be in the company and stay in the company, and that can do things like lower your recruitment costs. So, as we go through these 4 or 5 questions here, I'd love to see people chime in on the question area to say, do you agree that these are the key benefits from employee engagement initiatives, and are there any others that you track or manage? What do you measure to see if you're on the right track? So if you can share through the questionnaire, that would be awesome. And then we'll be able to report back to everybody if there's anything that we've missed here and what you guys feel is very important to measure to make sure you're on the right track. And so here we had the question of how do you build a recognition-rich culture? And it all starts with leadership. Leadership has to buy in and believe. It's almost a psychographic versus anything else. If leadership believes that culture is a key driver to success of their organization, like the old saying that culture eats strategy for lunch, that's very, very important. And then you need to communicate some more, and then continue to communicate. Because if you're not communicating, connecting, and celebrating all that's great in your company on a regular basis, people will have a tendency to forget and focus on the negative versus the positive. And of course, bringing in a peer-to-peer system where everybody can recognize anyone is a great foundational element. But don't just rely on peer-to-peer recognition as a stopgap for a lot of problems, and certainly don't fire and forget. You can't just turn on a program and assume you're checking a box and it's going to solve the problem. You need to have leadership involved, you have to hold managers accountable, and you need to get it to the highest level of KPIs where recognition and appreciation is something that you talk about at the board level even. And of course, feedback. You need to ask questions and make sure that what you are seeing and observing is confirmed, and or additional information can be acquired through various feedback models and polls and surveys. And then follow up on those items. Whatever you hear, see, or ask for, if you ask for feedback, you have to be prepared to act on it. And even if you don't act on it, you need to be able to explain why you did not act on it. If you don't do that, you'll end up shutting everybody down, and they'll figure, why bother? So you got to get in there. And of course, the main thing that you need to do is you need to have systems. You need to have tools and products that can help you create that consistency and accountability. And again, here, just based on that little ramble and overview, I would love to, see how many people actually agree with that sentiment. And I would really like to know if you guys could answer in the questionnaire, what are you currently doing for an employee recognition program? And we may even have a poll here that Natalie can watch, that you can participate in, to give us some of that feedback, to let us know what you're doing today. And that way we can report back and let everybody know, what you do. So here you can see a quick little poll on selecting things like, are you doing on-the-spot awards? Are you doing nominations? Are you doing years of service? Do you have peer-to-peer? Or are you relatively doing nothing at this point in time and know that you need to do something? But if you guys could answer that, that would give us some great feedback to know kind of where you all are at this point in time on the employee engagement paradigm. Oh, that's great. Crazy.
Yeah, there we go.
Good for you guys. Yeah, years of service is, one of the most, and the interesting thing is what I would say is, other than the 7% that said nothing, we'll help you get with the program if you need some help. But all of the things that you're doing, it should be in all of the above strategy with all the various things that you're doing. And if you can put them all into a system, because what a lot of you might do, and we did not ask the question, is some of this, you might be doing all these things, but you might be doing them manually or in a very manual process versus using some type of a tool. So that's one of the things that I would just encourage people to look at is, can you streamline it, get some of your hours back in the day or the month, if you are able to use programs, and make it a more of a far-reaching program by putting systems in place that allows everyone to have equal access. Thank you, Natalie. That was awesome. Good feedback.
No problem.
The next question we were going to be looking at was, who should give recognition and why? If you want to amplify a recognition culture, looking at that question, the answer is everyone. You should include everyone to become keepers of your culture and help you achieve that and the goals that you're looking for, because empowerment, trust, and transparency are three of the essential elements that create engagement. If I feel trusted and appreciated, I'm going to be a lot more engaged, leaning in. And we're not asking everyone to give 110% in all situations. What we're asking and looking for is just, what can we do to get everyone to give a 10% greater effort? And if we do that, it will lead to amazing outcomes. And peer-to-peer recognition allows everyone to become part of that peer-to-peer culture, and it provides, insights that you might not be getting right now, other than through surveys and polls and general inquiries. And even recognition given face-to-face, it's a lost opportunity for a teachable moment. And as a leader or a manager, if you could have a view of all of the recognition and communication happening in a social environment, it'll also give you some insights that you might not be aware of in relation to connections and interactions and contributions that people are making. So again, that's where the systems really come into play. And one of the things that I'd like to ask everybody is, at your office, who can give recognition? Is it mainly top down, or is it peer to peer? We did see that score of 37% on peer to peer, so that might be our answer right there. The next item that we were going to be chatting about was who should be able to give recognition to help you amplify your program, or when should you give recognition? And the answer is regularly. Recognition should be part of your culture and part of that system and systemic elements that you're looking for. And this is another poll in that area. And like, how often do you give recognition in your office, or you personally? Like, when was the last time you gave recognition to your team? And what we see with most of our clients globally and using our product is that people tend to give recognition about 3 to 5 times a month in the system. And that is more than enough to create the engagement you're looking for. Even if someone only receives one recognition message in a month, does not detract their from someone, or as compared to someone that might be receiving several more messages. Just getting one a month is a lot more than a lot of people were getting previously. And that one message can be of deeper meaning and insight than a lot of other recognition. But just a simple thank you for being a good friend, or helping out in small ways that lead to cultural improvement, to major accomplishments. It should just be part of a free-flowing element. And it won't be something that's completely overwhelming, because 3 to 5 messages on a monthly basis is more than enough to create what you're looking for. And then the next question is, where should you give recognition? And the answer is everywhere, similar to what I said a moment ago. And it does need to be an all of the above strategy, so that you do focus on recognition as a culture, so that you also add it into the rituals and the things that you do on a daily basis. If you do daily stand-ups, start the stand-up with a nice recognition message, or end the stand-up with a nice recognition message. And if you build it into your business metrics, and you have the ability to track and hold individuals accountable, not in a negative way, but just to help coach and mentor them along, and you'll start to see the positive results that you're looking for. And it can even go as high as a board level. Like, you can talk about things such as retention, you can talk about revenue and profitability, but talking about culture and engagement, and even how many recognition messages have been sent in a month or a year, is something that it'll move mountains. It'll create the environment that you're looking for. And if the top of the company is invested in it, that it will get down to the rest of the team. And really, what you're looking for in all messages is to make sure that it is authentic and meaningful. But at a manager level, it can also be very strategic. And one of the questions that I would ask everybody, because you always hear those, folklore stories about the individual with a Post-it note on their computer that they've had on their computer for many, many years, that somebody recognized them and said thank you. And the reason you hear about that story, and many others like it, is that recognition is far less pervasive than we think it is, and it's less, it doesn't stick that well if it's just in a one-on-one. So even if you do a one-on-one, or give somebody a shout out at an event, follow it up with something online, so that it does get recorded for posterity, and it does reach everybody in the organization. And what we found in our business is that once we started doing that, people, it started to resonate and stick more than just those one-to-one and shout outs or events where we would recognize individuals. Those are always fleeting because it's usually followed by, and we've got to get this done, and this is really important, and we need to get to our other goals. So even though you might be recognizing people in person or at events, it doesn't stick the same way it does as if you shared it through a system. How should you give recognition? And this is a very important aspect of making sure you have a successful recognition program. It needs to be timely. It needs to be focused on an individual. You can give a one-to-one or one-to-many, but one-to-one is always better. And if you can be specific about what you're recognizing the individual for, giving them praise for, and then associate it to some of the core behaviors that would lead to the desired results that you're looking for, the goal, and if possible, align it to how it supported your core values. So that's the perfect trifecta of a strategic recognition message. That being said, it's nice just to say, hey, Natalie, thank you very much for being the driver of this presentation. That's cool. But if you can go a little bit deeper, and I'll show you a great example here on the next slide, where I could say to Norm and to Natalie, we can't thank you enough for including Kudos in the TalentMap webinar, how to promote praise and influence engagement in the workplace. Very specific. And then I can align that to some of our core qualities that we strive for. And the goals is your commitment to education and evangelism of employee engagement demonstrates your leadership and commitment to building meaningful relationships. And the meaningful relationships part is one of the core values that TalentMap is trying to do and demonstrating through these various webinars. So that's a great example of a really wonderful type of recognition message that at the end of the day, it will help drive your business and help you achieve the goals that you're looking for. So that's really about all I had to share. And just one last little shameless plug. What we've done is we've created a system. And in fact, we didn't build this as a product that we wanted to sell initially. We were just like all of you guys. We had a company with a few hundred people in it, and we were striving to build a better organization and achieve our goals. And we could not figure out why we weren't getting the outcomes that we were looking for, and we felt that we were praising people on a regular basis, and we felt we had a pretty good culture, but it just wasn't clicking. And it didn't start to click until we actually started to use a system which we built for ourselves, which is now Kudos. Because once our team started, using this homemade product, they were so pumped and enthusiastic about it. They told all of our agency clients. And then next thing I knew, all of our agency clients started asking us if they could use our product because they were suffering from the exact same problems. And ever since then, we've been on a little bit of a rocket ride to change the world one thank you at a time. And if you ever need any help, give us a shout. And that's all I have to say about that, in the famous words of Forrest Gump.
That's great. Thank you so much, Tom. And thank you for the little recognition shout out to Norm and I. I think that was a lot of very valuable information for our listeners. So jumping into question period right now. So if you haven't submitted a question, please feel free to do so now. And while more questions come in, I just wanted to mention a few things. So we've been working very hard here at TalentMap to provide additional resources for our clients and our followers. We regularly post new articles on our blog each week that provide quick tips, tricks, and a look at industry trends, as well as some thought leadership pieces to keep you in the loop. Our resource library is fairly new. You can go there on our website, where you can find more in-depth content pieces, including our downloadable how-to guides, checklists, and info sheets to help guide your employee engagement initiatives. As for upcoming events and learning sessions, the TalentMap team and Kudos actually will be in Chicago this Sunday from June 17th to the 20th. So if any of you are attending, we would love to meet you. Feel free to send us an email, or our contact information will be on the last slide, or you can stop by the TalentMap booth number 2457 or Kudos at booth number 2123.
If you want a t-shirt, come on down.
Yeah. Make sure you say hello.
Yeah, exactly. You can wear Kudos t-shirts all over the conference. It'd be awesome.
Yeah. Perfect. And then as for our next upcoming webinar, the next one takes place on July 12th at 12 p.m. Eastern Time on how employee engagement can reduce presenteeism and absenteeism. This one is going to be presented by our senior engagement consultant, David Ang. He'll be discussing the state of presenteeism and absenteeism in 2018 and how higher employee engagement can reduce both in the workplace. A link to register will be sent along with today's presentation slides and webinar recording early next week. And then lastly, we'll also be at the OBJ Golf Tournament here in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada. We'll also be at the NHRMA's 80th Annual Conference and Trade Show in Tacoma, Washington. And then we'll also be at the OMAA Fall Workshop in Muskoka, Ontario. So if you're at any of those events, feel free to send a message. We always love meeting our listeners. And then one final note is our recently published Employee Engagement and Action Planning for Dummies book. If you haven't ordered your copy yet, you can go to our website at talentmap.com/dummies. The book is free, but there is a shipping charge, and you can waive the shipping costs by using the promo code TAKEACTION, which is on the screen. And that's everything from me, so we'll jump into the questions at this time. So for the first question is from Nikki. Her question is she's interested in more about how recognition can lead to fewer workplace accidents. Can you provide more insight into why this might be the case? So I'll pass it on to either Norm or Tom.
Norm, I'll jump in, and Tom, I'll let you complete.
Right on.
Essentially, we see sort of a triangulation here. So we've noticed a very high correspondence or correlation between safety culture and employee engagement. And so where the safety culture is very strong, or actually more appropriately, where it's weaker, it's where there's a little bit more concern about safety and safety culture, engagement takes a hit. And so if recognition is improving engagement, then engagement is also improving safety culture, safety culture improving engagement. It's a symbiotic relationship. So that's essentially what we would see anecdotally. I have to look a little bit more detailed to see if there's research, academic research that confirms that. But anecdotally and in our experience, I think it's really that triangulation between the relationship between safety culture, recognition, and employee engagement.
Yeah, and I would echo that, Norman, absolutely. And what we've seen specifically in the use of our product, when people do recognize, like whether it's in production environments, logistics or transportation, which we see a lot of, and even in a standard office, even out here in Calgary, we see a high attention to safety, even from the standpoint where they actually make you hold the handrail when you walk down the stairs just to be safe. And then, and then what's happening with recognition systems like that is if I encourage you to do that, or if I actually catch you doing it, it kind of catch people doing things good, and then you recognize it, you will get more of it. And then that, of course, will lead to improvements in safety instances or lost days at work or any kind of cost elements. And then the other thing that we also see people do through programs and systems like both of ours, it's not just recognizing people, it's also about communicating what those best practices are, and then also following that up with polls and surveys that can be fun and culture building to see if people are picking up what you're putting down in regards to what's important in regards to safety at all aspects within a business.
Great, thank you. For our next question comes from Anika. Her question is, how do you change the praise culture of a company that has been in existence for over 50 years and has the mindset we've always done it this way?
Oh, do you want that one, Norm, or do you want me to go after that?
Take that first, and I'll tag on.
Absolutely. So again, as I was kind of saying in my presentation, it does have to be something that leadership buys into, because if leadership doesn't support it, it does decrease the probability of overall success. So it has to be a strategic initiative where you know that going to a peer-to-peer versus top-down approach is the right way to go. And just using some of the statistics and the changing workforce elements, much outlined by Norm earlier, you need to build a good business case as to why this is the right direction. And of course, one of the things that we saw, which was absolutely astounding and eye-opening, is one of our larger clients with a few thousand people on the system was having a trouble with retention. Their business was good. They're making money. They're doing all right. But retention and turnover was not where they wanted it to be. And in their exit interviews, one of the top three things that people would always mention as to why they were leaving was the lack of appreciation and feeling valued. Since putting in Kudos in their program, it went the exact opposite way, where retention did improve a bit, but there's a lot of levers that you can pull in those situations. But what they did see in all of the exit interviews is that the reason for leaving, the idea of retention or of appreciation or feeling valued, was no longer mentioned at all in any of the exit interviews following the implementation of a program. But the big thing that's tough with old companies like that might be focused more on ROI, the soft stuff like recognition and feedback is a tough thing to associate a true ROI or that can be specifically attributed to it. So that is where the biggest rub is and the challenge. And Norm, I don't know if you have any.
I'll just add 3 quick points. Number one is, given that the company has been in existence over 50 years, I'm guessing that a lot of the senior leadership and the managers will be boomers, if not Xers, maybe even a traditionalist or two in there. The generation argument is really effective here because they see with their kids and grandkids, the millennials, they see how different they are. And when I'm in a boardroom, the hottest topic in the boardroom, I can go through an engagement presentation and somebody's always going to ask me, how do I manage those millennials? And this is so they were open to the argument that the new generation really means that our generation has to change their way of doing things. That's argument number one. I pull out Einstein for an argument number two. You've been doing the same thing for 50 years and you haven't seen any difference. Well, that's the definition of insanity, right? So you're not going to see any different behavior if you continue to do the same thing. And so that's I would just add those pieces. And then finally, some of those factoids we put on the slides before. I mean, there is a business case for the link between recognition and these business outcomes. So appeal to that.
Perfect. Thank you both. And then another question from Natalie. Her question is, how do you avoid favoritism and the buddy effect on peer-to-peer? And what do you do when some managers are great at recognition and others forget to use a program like Kudos?
Awesome. Great question. I'll jump on that one first, yeah. Norm, and then if you want to chime in. So that is a concern. In addition to that, also, how do you prevent people from, doing something inappropriate in a social peer-to-peer system? I'll kind of cover that as well. So in a social system, if it's transparent, people are typically on their best behavior and are doing it for the right reason. Everyone's heard the old, saying of, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. And that does kind of hold true in the system. And what we've seen is that the transparency and the trust and empowerment usually leads to people using the system in the exact way that you expect. But plan for the worst and hope for the best is a good way of looking at it as well. Even when it comes to what if somebody says something off policy, negative, passive aggressive, that type of a thing. And again, the transparency prevents that, but then using simple tools like crowdsourced moderation and ways to remove things from a social wall is there. And of course, anything that is done inappropriately or incorrectly should always be addressed, as in a timely manner. And then the second part of that question, again, Natalie, if you could remind me, it was not just about the favoritism element, but there was also the.
Yes. So the second part of the question is, what do you do when some managers are great at recognition and others forget to use a program like Kudos?
Absolutely. Well, putting a system in place will help improve the probability of consistent use in the system. And then by doing a social system that empowers everyone, even if you have a manager that isn't as free giving of recognition, the team members on the team can actually be supportive to that department or group. And of course, gathering all those analytics and trying to associate, groups that have better retention because maybe it has a correlation to more recognition or more sincere strategic recognition. You can take those learnings and share them through coaching and mentoring with other individuals in the organization that may be struggling or just having a tough time trying to use a system because maybe it's just not in their nature. Maybe they're the traditionalist or the boomer, and they find it really difficult to do anything they feel is frivolous or not worthy based on their worldview. So what we find is that the system will support itself with the volume of individuals in it. And through coaching and mentoring, you can help those who struggle with it. And then, of course, with just good, healthy competition and accountability of just asking people, as part of their job role and responsibilities, your job is to give performance reviews on a regular basis, and your job is to make sure that you're recognizing your team in a consistent way, which is strive for 3 messages a month at a minimum, kind of a thing. And then if they're not doing anything, you have to ask the larger question: do you feel that your team isn't doing anything worthy of recognition? So it's a conversation and part of manager training and growth.
Perfect. Thank you, Tom. I think we'll do one more question really quickly, and then we'll start wrapping up. So we have a lot of questions. So if we aren't able to get to them, we'll make sure to follow up with everyone by email. But for our final question is, how do we engage or recognize employees that work offsite or remotely?
Well, again, in this situation, by having a system that has the ability to reach and connect remote workers, because that's one of the largest things that we hear all the time is people call us because they say, we just ran a survey and found out our morale is not where we want it to be. Or we have a lot of millennials joining the team and a lot of people work remotely. So again, having a social system that can bring everyone together that uses both communication and recognition to create a way to connect everybody across the world really creates that transparency, inclusiveness, and connections that you're looking for. So again, you need social systems to make sure that the remote team members feel as equally involved and equally informed. Because if you look at the Q12, like what the Gallup organization did years ago, people were looking, the things that really drive engagement is, do I have a boss that cares about me personally and professionally? Have I been recognized in the last 7 days for doing what I do well? Do I have the tools I need to do my job? Do I have a best friend at work? And do I know what's going on in the company? And there's all the other questions, but the more you can answer in the affirmative on all of those questions, the higher level of engagement you'll have in your organization and the better business results that you'll achieve.
Perfect. Thank you. So that's all the time we have. Thank you, everyone who submitted questions. As a reminder, the recording of the webinar and slide deck will be posted on the website early next week, and we'll be sure to email you directly once it's available. And also, please don't forget to fill out the post-webinar feedback survey. Let us know what you think of today's presentation, or even let us know about other topics you'd like to hear in the future. So that's our presentation today. The feedback survey will pop up once we end the presentation. So thank you again, Tom. That was great. And thank you, Norm, for both of you taking the time out of your busy days to present. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. So we hope you'll join us all again.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.